The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Oshkosh Media, the City of Oshkosh, or your video service provider.
Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm your host Cheryl Hentz and very happy to be joined tonight by our Winnebago County Executive, Mark Harris. You're on at least once a year, sometimes twice, but this past year it's just been once, so glad to have you back.
Well, Cheryl, it's my pleasure. Sure. Thank you.
We're going to be talking about a lot of things tonight. Let's start with, and we will get to taxes because I know that's, something that is going to be on people's minds here as we move into the fall a little bit further. But let's start with a discussion about Barry Busby, our county coroner. He has resigned. His resignation takes effect October 31st. How long has he been in office?
I think it's been about 20 years.
20 years, okay.
And he initially came into office by being appointed by a governor. When Jane Vandehey became county executive, that created a vacancy in the coroner's office.
That's right.
And Barry Busby was appointed to fill that vacancy.
Okay, because he was in there already, right? Or was he not in the coroner's office at all?
I think that's what brought him into the coroner's office.
All right. I couldn't remember if he was like a deputy coroner or an assistant. Or...
He could have been, but that's how he became the coroner, was being appointed.
Well, so for people who are not aware of this, there have been allegations of sexual harassment, receiving kickbacks from tissue and organ donation companies, unlawful termination, and excessive absenteeism. He's been in Florida for a good chunk of his time this year. Some of this stuff, I don't know, was any of this proven at all, or some of it is court cases that are ongoing?
Well, most of it was just allegations. Mm-hmm. But there was two things that I focused on, one of which I had firsthand knowledge of and one of which I didn't. The one I had firsthand knowledge of is the chief deputy came forward and said that Barry is out of town most of the time. And so I asked the IT department to give me the phone records, and the phone records would indicate what tower was the last tower pinged when calls were placed to Mr. Busby, and what tower was the first tower pinged when Barry Busby placed calls. And we could pretty well document that much of the time he was in the Tampa area or the Lauderdale area or Las Vegas. He clearly was spending a lot of time away from Winnebago County, perhaps half of his time.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. I personally don't think that's right. What's his salary?
It's about $70,000.
Okay, about $70,000 a year. So I personally don't think that that's really right, but I suppose the argument could be made, well, is there any requirement to be in the area, a specific number of weeks or months in your, I don't even want to call it a term. Well, yeah, he was elected, so it was a term. So there's nothing really that says you've got to be there X number of weeks. Or
there isn't. You're accountable to the electorate.
Yeah.
But I think because he intended this to be his last term, I think he felt that he wasn't accountable. Mm-hmm. So he felt he could get away with this.
Sure.
I'm not his boss. Being elected, the public are his boss.
Yeah.
But I don't think the public would think well if I had ignored it when the chief deputy came forward. I checked out his claims, not expecting them to be true.
Yeah.
But they were true, that Barry clearly was spending a lot of time out of state. And that has an impact on the taxpayers, because if Barry wasn't covering any call time and wasn't going on death calls, then those all were being done by deputies. And the deputies were paid for covering call and actually paid an additional amount when they actually went out on a call. And so the cost was going up for the taxpayer. And that was because he was taking an unfair amount of time off.
Yeah.
There was a second issue, and I have less firsthand knowledge of this, but there's a Coroners and Medical Examiners Association. They had sent a letter to Barry asking him not to attend their conferences. And we became aware of the background to that, but they never actually released their findings, but they did exclude him from attending their events.
So since he's elected by the public and is answerable only to the electorate, what do they do at their meetings that they would ask him not to attend?
This would be a conference.
Okay.
And learning, new techniques,
Okay.
what proper procedures are. It was supposed to be a learning experience.
Sure. And so they specifically asked him not to come, but they didn't say why.
Well, a woman came forward and said that she had filed a complaint against him for, I'm going to say, very aggressive passes and inappropriate language. I don't want to talk more about it,
Sure.
But I thought there was enough there that if the voters knew that, they would not be satisfied. And it was either going to have to result in an effort to recall him, or we asked him to resign.
Yeah.
It really seemed like he wanted to be retired, but he also wanted to continue to draw the salary.
Well, sure. Continue to draw the salary while you're enjoying the sunny South and, warm weather and beaches and waves and everything that Florida has to offer on our dime, basically. Had he said that he wanted to retire, that this was going to be his last term?
He had indicated that it
said
was his last term, but even if he was to be recalled, you can't recall someone until they've been in office for a year.
For a year, yeah.
And it requires an enormous number of signatures. I'm glad that he chose to step down at the end of October instead of putting the public through that process. And
Right.
I should say, Barry did have good qualities as well. He was very empathetic in dealing with people when they were going through the trauma of a death. There were good traits as well, but it had reached the point where he really wanted to behave as if he was retired while he still had the job.
Well, now he'll have a chance. When his term was how many years? 4 or 6?
A 4-year term.
4-year term, okay. And that would have been up when?
Well, he was elected last November, so it
That's
would
right.
be
Yeah.
get to November in another 3 years from now. So
Yeah, because his term would have taken effect in January then, right?
yeah,
So, so he would still be in the first year of a 4-year term.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I know with recalls, you're right, you can't recall until they've been in office for 1 full year, and then you've got to get a lot of signatures, and that's based on what the past voting totals have been. I believe that's how they do it.
I think it's a percentage of how many votes both candidates got for governor.
Yeah, it's a weird kind of formula that they use. And then you have to find a candidate who can beat him in another election,
That's right.
for the recall election. And that didn't work so well for those of us who wanted to see Scott Walker gone, because he beat whoever was running against him. So we'd have to find somebody to beat him in a recall election, and you could end up with a lot of money spent to end up with the same result. So I guess as a taxpayer, I too am happy that he's doing this. And today is October 10th, and he's done 21 days from now. So,
And just Tuesday of this week, I'm not sure when this will air, but
it'll air starting next week.
okay. So we've just hit on October 10th. We've just gone a few days past when resumes had to be submitted to the governor. They'll do some sort of panel interview, and then it's really the governor's appointment to fill the vacancy of the term.
Okay.
I did send emails out to people that had emailed me that this process was going on, and I know there's been a lot of people that have submitted their resumes, and hopefully they'll attend and they'll make a selection.
Sure. Is it people from out of state or out of the area, or some here and some there, or what's
I
the
think
makeup?
mostly in the area.
Okay.
And just people that have expressed an interest in the job. I'm probably going to pass on to the governor my recommendation, and I think I'll keep that to myself today. But
Sure, yeah.
we've got good people working in the coroner's office that are doing the job.
Right.
I'm hoping that whoever we appoint will agree to become a medical examiner, and that's a little confusing. A medical examiner doesn't have to have any other qualifications than a coroner. And a coroner just has to be old enough to run.
Right, I was
and
going
be
to say,
elected.
you don't really, I don't know how you do the job, or I've got the qualifications to run, but I wouldn't know how to begin to do an autopsy. You got to have some kind of medical background. I mean, I guess if I read enough books, I could do it, Mark.
Yeah, but it depends on the size of the community. Some communities,
Yeah.
people come out of the funeral home industry to be coroner. Sometimes law enforcement, someone
Sure.
with a medical background, but most communities can't afford
Yeah,
the compensation that you might expect if someone's an MD.
sure.
But experience is probably the chief requirement.
Sure.
So if they've worked in a coroner's office or have similar background, that's probably a big help in doing the job.
Sure.
But you could add additional requirements.
Who could? The county could, or the governor could, or who would do that?
We've actually already voted to change this position to a medical examiner
Yes.
at the end of this term, because the board can only change it as of the end of a term.
Okay,
And they have to make that change prior to the time people could take out nomination papers. So another 3 years from now,
okay.
it's going to go to a medical examiner, because that's already been voted on by the board.
Okay,
If whoever's appointed coroner is agreeable to it, they could agree to change to a medical examiner sooner.
okay.
But there's some discussion on the board that they might want to upgrade the position. They might want to look for that medical experience. I would think that someone who's appointed coroner would not willingly accept a change to a medical examiner unless they felt that they would qualify for the criteria
Sure.
that the board's looking for.
Yeah. So, unless it's voted on to happen sooner, we would not switch to a medical examiner then from coroner until January of 2023. Does my math work out here?
I'm going to have to do it in my head now. So 19, one more year, 20, 21, 22. I think January of 22.
Okay.
I think.
Well, either 22, 23, sometime.
Because the last election was November of 18. They took the job in January of 19.
So 4 years would be 2023.
You're correct.
All right, my math stands up.
It does
All right,
stand
good. Because math has never been my strong suit. You had me wondering there, Mark. But the board, a majority of the county board, could decide, or the coroner would have to decide.
Well, the coroner would have to agree to it. I think the board has already put in their resolution that will change to medical examiner the sooner of a sitting coroner agreeing to the change or the end of this current term, whichever comes first.
Okay, so the coroner would have to agree to do it earlier than January 2023, but one way or the other, if that coroner doesn't agree to do it, it will change January of 2023 to a medical examiner.
That's correct. And there's different levels of requirements, qualifications that a board could set for a medical examiner. But it doesn't have to be anything beyond what's required for a coroner, which is really
Very
nothing.
little. Yeah. So one of the benefits then to having a medical examiner as opposed to a coroner, one that I thought of immediately is, does it then become a position of appointment as opposed to one that's voted?
That's correct. They would be a
Okay.
county employee,
Okay.
and they would be serving at the county executive discretion.
Okay.
And it just provides a level of supervision that we haven't had in the past.
Well, yeah, for umpteen years. Have we ever, I know you're from Michigan originally, I'm from here originally, but I don't recall. Has it ever been a medical examiner position, or has it always been a coroner? Do
We've
you know?
always had a coroner, to my
Okay.
knowledge,
Okay.
and they've not always been strong in that position.
Yeah. I don't even know if I can remember, besides Jane Vandehei, I can't tell you who the coroner was before that.
Well, there was a fellow by the name of Stelter.
Oh, Mike Stelter, sure.
Yeah.
He was here in the late 70s, early 80s, Mike Stelter. Yep, and then I probably know, but I'd have to go back and look through stuff.
I would too. All
yeah.
before my time. So
I'm remembering a name, Dewey Moore, but he ran the ambulance company that we had in town, and that's going back a lot of years. So anyway, well, it was interesting, this whole process, because the county board had to, well, I guess they didn't have to, but they did do a vote of no confidence. And there were a handful of county supervisors who didn't want to go along with the status quo. They felt that, I mean, do you have any sense, I know you're not going to speak for them, but did anyone say to you, Mark, here's why we're voting against this no confidence vote?
I think a few of them had experiences with deaths. Barry was involved, and they liked the work that he did at the time. So I think out of respect for that, they just didn't want to vote for the resolution of no confidence.
Yeah.
But none of them seemed disappointed that he resigned.
Okay. I know one who didn't even vote for, she didn't vote for the no confidence, and she didn't vote to change it to a medical examiner position, was Susan Locke out of Menasha. And I don't know her at all. I've never met her. I used to cover Nina Menasha for a newspaper, but I've never met her. So do you know what her deal was, or why she was?
I think she just had an experience during her lifetime with Barry Busby and a death, and that she felt she was treated well at that time. And Barry was good at that part of the job.
Yeah, but even even once he submitted his letter of resignation, she still didn't want to switch to a medical examiner as opposed to a coroner. I find that kind of interesting. I really do. But in any event, things are going to change at one point or another here, and I look forward to seeing who the new coroner is going to be. When will we have knowledge of who that person is that Governor Evers appoints?
Well, the period for taking applications and resumes is already passed. I believe that was Tuesday, and
October 8th.
October 8th.
Yes.
Well, and so I don't think it will be long. I don't know an exact date.
Okay.
But I'm hoping they're completed by the 31st of October so that we can put someone in place.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, anything else that you want to talk about as far as that goes? That that was a huge thing for this county, I think, to deal with that. And the last thing that I think even came close to this was Joe Paulus. And there was another situation where you've got this guy who's doing all this stuff, and unless you vote him out of office, you're not going to get rid of him. But he got sent to prison, so that kind of took care of that for us.
And what that kind of tells us is that without press of some kind exposing things, and usually it requires someone who works with people to come forward, then the public's really not going to know.
Right.
And so that when we vote on these offices, if we're not able to get information, if there isn't someone willing to dig into things, then we can be voting blind.
Sure.
Because,
Yeah.
you know, Joe eventually was accused of taking bribes to fix drunken driving.
Yeah.
And was really strong-armed with a lot of people that were working for him as DA.
He was. And Mitch Shireland also had gone the same path of bribery. I can't remember if Mitch did any prison time. He might have, but I think he lost his law license, didn't he?
Yes.
And Joe, I'm sure, lost his.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So Joe's not even, he did his prison time, and that was that a federal prison? It was, wasn't it?
I think so.
Because
I think
it was
he was
the feds
down.
that prosecuted him.
Yeah.
So, and he's long since out, and he's enjoying life, I guess, but not around here. So.
Hopefully, you know, I imagine he's reformed and is doing something positive, but he needed to go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. For sure. Okay. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about that big book you brought with us, with you. Is that the budget book for 2020?
That is the budget book. It is an enormous book.
It certainly is.
There's everything you want to know about the county's budget in here at least once, and some things twice.
I remember when I ran for county board, I was given one of those to look through, and I'll tell you, it took a lot of nights and a lot of hours looking through it to try and figure it out and get a handle on it. So what are we looking at? Let's talk about taxes for 2020, because we in Winnebago County and the city of Oshkosh won't be getting our tax bills until sometime in December, but you, of course, know what the county portion is going to be. How are we looking?
Yeah, and you know, that process is a complicated process.
It is.
The county uses market values that the state provides. And we just, you figured out how much money the county needs within the levy limitations that are imposed on us. And that's really tight. We can only increase the tax levy by the percentage that our tax base is increased by new construction. So basically we get new revenues from new construction, and we actually cut the tax rate to offset any appreciation there's been in the homes.
Right.
But that's just giving us the total that we can have. We then spread it back to all the municipalities based on their relative market value to the whole. So if your community's market value is 10% of the market value in the county, that community is responsible for 10% of the tax bill. However, that community then spreads their share of the bill over their assessed values. And the reason it's done that way is because not every community is assessed at the same percentage of market value. So if we just spread it by assessed value, communities that didn't have their homes assessed for their full value would have lower taxes than communities that had them assessed at their true value.
Well, right, and we don't have our homes assessed on a regular basis.
No.
It's like maybe once every 10 years, the valuations have to be refigured or whatever. But I mean, I know a lot of homeowners, and they're like, we've never had anyone in our home to assess anything. And that's true of other communities as well.
Sure.
That's not just something that's unique to Oshkosh. But is there an easier way of figuring this stuff out, Mark?
Not if you really want it to be fair.
Yeah.
But here's the good news. We talk about something called equalized tax rate. And that's what the rate would be if we were taxing the market value of properties.
Okay.
And that equalized tax rate is going to go down 19 cents.
Okay.
And
that's the equalized tax rate.
that's the equalized tax rate.
Down 19 cents.
But what that means for the average homeowner, I'm finally going to get to something that actually would mean something to the taxpayer.
Yeah, because my eyes are starting to kind of glaze over at this point.
Yeah. For the average taxpayer, they're going to see little or no change in the county portion of their tax bill.
Okay. Now, I'll just interrupt. So, I'm a taxpayer. I'm sitting here saying, wow, there's a lot of construction around here. You got Oshkosh Corp building their new stuff. There's all these, we've got 2 new general stores that are here. We got new businesses that are popping up, and for CBD stuff, and I don't know if they're building new stuff or if they're just taking over existing stuff. We've got the groundbreaking for the mine shaft out, whatever that plaza is, out by the airport. There's a lot of new construction in the community. So if I'm a taxpayer looking at this, like I am, I'm going to say, well, how come with all this construction, my taxes for the county portion are either staying the same or they're maybe even going up just a tad?
Well, that's that increase and the amount of new construction for 2018, which is the last completed full year that we have when we developed the 2020 budget.
Sure.
It was something like 1.38%.
Okay.
And that's what we have to deal with to cover increasing wages, increasing health insurance, and any new programs or expenditures we do. So we're always under a very, very tight budget. Now, the total value of property went up closer to 5%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's why we have to cut the rate 19 cents, is so that we're not getting additional revenues from the growth in the value of property, only from the new construction.
Sure.
But there's also other things going on at the same time. Maybe your community's values are going up faster than the average, so some of that share shifts to your community. So everybody's taxes will not change the exact same amount, but they will average out for the whole county to pretty much no change.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, it's so frustrating because we keep hearing, we got to have more construction, got to have more new construction, got to get more new construction. And then we start getting new construction, and it just seems like, other than seeing a whole lot more orange cones and having traffic patterns diverted to make way for that construction, we're not seeing much of a change.
No. And, but I actually think that's a good thing. If people were to pull several years of tax bills, I don't know what their total tax bill will have done, but for nearly everybody, their county tax bill will have stayed almost flat. In some cases, decreased a little bit.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, but I think, you know, just overall, it would be really nice to see these taxes coming down, especially when we're seeing water bills going up. We've had, you know, you live in the city. They've gone up. You do live in the city,
I do
right?
live in the city,
Yeah,
yes.
I thought you did. You know, we've seen 3 increases in the last year for the water bills. You know, we keep seeing things going up, and yet we're not really seeing a change with all this new construction. So it's a very frustrating situation. And then, of course, we see budgets that are being balanced on, as they have been forever, balanced on the backs of middle-income households. You know, the rich aren't feeling this, and I don't want to get a bunch of letters or emails from people who are paying, you know, taxes that are in a higher tax bracket. That's always been the way. The budgets are state budget, city budget, whatever. It's always balanced on the backs of the middle to low-income taxpayers in some cases.
Especially things like payroll tax or income tax, largely state functions, or federal government functions.
Yeah.
But the county relies on property tax, and you don't see the same type of shift, except it's quite possible that working class people have a higher value of house compared to their income than the very wealthy. So it is a little bit of a regressive tax.
Yeah. Okay. Just out of curiosity, when there's new construction, is it figured into all of these equations when it's finally done and the construction is completed and someone's signed off on that? Or does it start when you break ground or when you start paying taxes? What's the timeline as to when it
Now,
really...
I'm not an expert on this, but I will tell you what I think is true.
Okay.
I think the value of the property at the end of the year works into the equation. But remember, we're always looking back to the last full year to do the next year's budget. So the value of the property on December 31st, 2018 is what we use for the 2020 budget.
Okay.
So I get the new construction done during 18. I don't get the new construction done during 19 until the 2021 budget.
So we're not seeing this stuff then?
Some of the things you mentioned, Oshkosh Corp., I think a lot of that construction was completed in 19, so that we won't get the benefit of that yet.
Okay.
But I think part of it was done, some work was done on the site probably in 18, so we got something for that.
Yeah, but the bulk of it this year, so...
Secura Insurance up in Fox Crossing was an enormous project. That most of that or some of that fell in 18, probably most of it in 19.
Okay.
But we at least got part of it. And that's actually been a hot area of growth, has been the Fox Crossing area.
Yeah, it's a nice area. You know, for folks who aren't familiar with it, it's the former town of Menasha. Why did they ever change their name? Was it because it was so confusing to people?
Well, they became a village, which is a different...
Rather than a town.
Yeah, it's a different political entity. They have different rights in annexation. So I think that's why they did that.
Okay, all right. It was a little confusing to me at first because I just wanted to keep calling it the town of Menasha, and I probably still will slip up from time to time on that one. But it's a nice area, and there is a lot of growth over there. So.
There is, and when they changed the 1041 interchange to a full clover leaf, that allowed northbound traffic to head west, and that's really opening up that area. The county's widening CB and putting in a couple roundabouts because the development requires that.
These roundabouts. You know, I don't mind the roundabouts, Mark, but so let me ask you a question about this. I don't mind them. I know how to drive in them. A lot of people know how to drive in them. But a lot of people don't, and they don't go the speed limit. Why can't we better enforce these roundabouts with photo enforcement? I've talked to others about this, and I've been told that, oh, well, there could be some privacy situations there, some privacy concerns there. There shouldn't be any privacy concerns, and you know, you're not a practicing lawyer, but you are a lawyer. You know, there's photo enforcement all over the place. California's had it for years. It's been in Arizona for years. Construction zones in Chicago, they use it. I just don't understand why we can't use it, and not just in the roundabouts, but elsewhere along 41. Get these people who are speeding along 41 and going like a bat out of hell down that highway.
I think it also can be enforced by either city police or sheriff's deputies.
Sure, but there's a danger there then. Then you've got those officers in potentially dangerous situations. If you had cameras, you'd always be getting those things enforced. It would be safer for officers. They could be off doing something that's a little less dangerous, perhaps. Or not, but they would be able to attend to other things. But you could also always be filling your coffers, you know? Well, I'm serious.
That's dangerous stuff for a politician.
Well, I know, but wouldn't it be nice to not have these budget problems, you know? Wouldn't it be, I mean, let's get the people who are violating the laws to help pay for some of the stuff that's going on.
Well, let's remind the public that at most roundabouts, they're yields. They're not stops.
I know, but people just fly through there. They do not go 15 miles an hour,
Exactly.
Mark.
The speed limit is 15 miles an hour in the roundabout. So if you're going through the roundabout at the same speed you approach the roundabout on whatever street it's on, you're probably exceeding the legal limit. And I know there's one fast food delivery people. I always advised my kids when they were younger that you go into the roundabout, you yield to the traffic to your left, and you don't go at all if there's a certain sandwich shop's car approaching the intersection.
I'm not going to ask you who that is,
No.
Yeah, I mean, well, any delivery service really, I'm not indicting all delivery services, but, they're trying to get food to customers, to people, as fast as they can. But, I don't think that few seconds that you're saving, even if you add those up over the course of a night, I just don't think it's worth having an accident, which would make you really late with someone's food,
Yes.
or increased insurance rates or whatever. I don't think it's worth it. It's a few seconds that you're saving.
But the reason we go to the roundabouts is a good one. There actually is about the same amount of accidents in roundabouts as in a normal
But they should
intersection.
be safer because you're not T-boning, you're hitting in what should be a slower area.
Exactly. The collisions are at a lower speed and they're between cars heading the same direction, so that the seriousness of the accidents is much less in roundabouts than at a normal cross intersection. And that's why they've become so popular.
Yeah. Do we have any anecdotal evidence to share on those? Or is it still a little too soon for us in this area? Because there have been parts of the country where they went into it with the same idea that it was going to have, the accidents would be a lesser impact, you'd have less injuries, less severe injuries, that kind of thing. And yet a lot of places out east and so forth have been taking them out.
I think our experience here has been that similar level of accidents, but much less severe. But there's a reason for another caution. Really be vigilant for pedestrians and bicycles, because they're crossing a street not far from the roundabout. So you have to be aware that you can't turn out of the roundabout without allowing the pedestrians and the bicyclists to cross. So you just make sure you're not speeding out of the roundabout into a pedestrian.
Yeah, or entering the roundabout.
That's right.
Because it can get you that way too. I don't know. I should look the next time I go through some of the roundabouts. I know the ones on Witzel have flags that pedestrians or even bicyclists who are crossing might be able to use, and I have seen some people using them. Do all the roundabouts, have flags?
I think I've seen them at the ones at 9th Street as
Okay.
well.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
So I think many of the roundabouts in Oshkosh, the city has provided the flags.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. But what do we have to do to start getting some photo enforcement of places?
I don't know if I'm ready to call for that or not. But
Really?
yeah, but I think we probably do need some speed enforcement. But I don't know if I really want to go to the photo enforcement.
Why?
Well, it just has a feel of Big Brother to it.
Oh, come on. We are all, you shouldn't go through 1 minute of your day, Mark, not thinking you're on camera somewhere, and not just when you're here doing this show.
Okay.
I mean, come on. Really?
Well, let me think about it.
Okay. All right. I don't like Big Brother either, but, a cop giving me a ticket or a photo snapping a machine taking a picture, either way, if you're breaking the law, then you should have to pay for breaking that law.
Yeah, but there also would be a cost to doing the
Sure, but
photo
you're going to
coming.
recoup it in the long run because look how many tickets you're going to get.
Oh, that's true. But I still need to think about it.
You think about it, and when you come on in 2020, I'm going to hit you up on that again.
Well, the county actually hasn't had a lot of roundabouts for very long.
I'm still going to hit you up on it.
I'll be ready for you.
Okay, I'll do that in 2020. I'm hoping for a better response. Okay, how do you think we're doing under Governor Evers? Do you think we're doing good as a county, as a state?
The budget he proposed was very favorable to local governments. It got scaled back quite a bit by the legislature. And so this budget is a little better for us, but the improvement is not enormous. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of pressures on us. The Child Protective Services throughout the state are feeling some pressure from both the meth and the opiate addictions, where there's kids in protective custody longer, and oftentimes they're repeated times coming into custody, and that puts a strain on the county's budgets.
Sure.
Mental health issues can put a real strain on our budget. If people in certain age ranges go to Winnebago Mental Health, that's billed back to the county, just in certain age ranges. And that's $1,000 a day. Yeah. So to the extent that there's a mental health epidemic, that can increase our costs as well.
Sure. Well, let's talk about, I had it further down, but let's talk about the mental health facilities now. I think, we need more because we're having a lot of people who get Chapter 54 or whatever, so they're sent from a county jail to the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. They're taking a look at these folks and they're booting them right back to the jail because they're saying they don't belong here. Well, they have mental health issues, regardless of what you are determining over at Winnebago Mental Health Institute. You know, people who are in their right mind don't sit there and eat their own feces. They don't sit there and break their eyeglasses and then start eating their eyeglasses. These people have issues, and people who are running a jail, they're not equipped to deal with people with mental health issues. So, I mean, and plus, even with mass shootings, all this, we just have a huge mental health problem. And I know it starts at the top. You know, we've got to have someone sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue who recognizes that and is going to give us money for more mental health things rather than some dumb wall that's not going to accomplish much of anything.
And actually, the county's only charged with dealing with mental health crisis, like short-term care, not long-term mental health care. But there
as
needs
some of these
to be
inmates would be. Probably.
Yeah, there needs to be more available to people with long-term mental health issues.
Yeah. Well, what can we do to get that? Because we have the problem here; it's everywhere. You know.
And I think it's probably going to take some federal and state monies to address it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that Mr. Trump can find some money somewhere. He seems to find plenty for silly things. You've got a 16-bed mental health crisis center that
correct.
You wanted to talk about.
Well, it's nearly done. It should be completed by year end.
Where's it at?
It's right near Parkview Nursing Home.
Oh,
just
I saw
north
that.
of there.
Okay, that's what that is. I saw that just a weekend or two ago. And, so that's what that is. Okay. So will there be like a grand opening or something like that? Or?
I don't know. I haven't seen plans for a grand opening, but I suspect we'll have some sort of opening.
Okay.
I should be careful to point out we currently have 2 8-bed facilities that were not built as mental health crisis centers. We are leaving those rented buildings and moving into the 16-bed. Okay. So this is not really an expansion of the number of beds we have available. Okay. It will be a better facility and probably will be a little cheaper to operate a new facility designed for the purpose we're using it for.
Sure. So what will happen to those 2 other 8-bed facilities?
Those are buildings that we're leasing from the Housing Authority.
Okay.
And they'll go back to the Housing Authority, and I suspect that they'll sell them.
Okay. All right. And the Housing Authority is still a county. It's a really, city and county shared.
Right. There's actually a city housing authority and a county housing authority run by the same organization, but they're actually funded with federal money. They're not in either the city or the county's budget.
So when they're sold, it would be a county sale, or it would become federal money then?
It would be the housing authority sale.
Okay.
And I don't know how they would redeploy the funds, but they always have a demand for more capital. There's a lot of demand for housing assistance.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit. We're down to like 15 minutes, even a little bit less than that. I want to talk about stock car racing for a moment, and I know that this has been a sticky widget for a lot of people, or some people would call it a sticky wicket, but I like widgets. So, Life Fest had a very nice turnout this last year, with it being their first year that they had the new stage and all of that. But people still miss stock car racing. Is there any place in the area, Mark, where stock car racing could be entertained? And I guess the second part of that would be, is it something that the county, you being the county executive,
Sure.
but the county board being the ultimate decision makers, that you guys could all kind of get behind and support?
I don't know, because we gave that a lot of years. When the racetrack was built, there was an agreement that they would pay, I think, $100,000 a year. And the argument made when the county built the racetrack was that the citizens would not be out any money because the county was bonding for it, and the annual payments from the racetrack operators would service the bond issue. Well, the first year that organization went under, they were paying us at the rate they promised, but they couldn't make a go of it at that price. The second group couldn't make a go of it and didn't actually pay us as much money.
Okay.
That's about the time I was elected. We had a group that wanted to come back, and we didn't have another use for the facility at the time, so we said, all right, we'll let you come back for very little money, but you've got to build the revenues up over time to make this work for the county. Well, I think they tried hard to build it up, but they never paid us a significant amount of money. And in fact, we probably lost money over the life of the track, lost quite a bit.
Okay.
And we gave them many years. And there just was no sign that it was growing to the point where they could pay us what we really needed to get.
Yeah. So would it have to be like, I guess like anything, maybe a private venture?
I think so, but even a private venture would have to cover its costs.
Sure.
And what the pattern we see is there's less and less tracks. Now, it may be that when the number of tracks gets small enough, that the volume of traffic or audience at those tracks will rise and they can make a go of it. But really the trend right now has been for counties to shut down their tracks.
Okay. All right. Well, that's kind of sad news, I guess, for those folks who do enjoy stock car racing. But, who knows? Maybe under the right conditions, and like you said, other tracks being sort of funneled away from or funneled out of, and then you've got more people to go to fewer tracks. That might build up your capacity attendance more. I don't know.
And I am aware. I mean, if you have to go to Beaver Dam to watch the racing, that's
It's
an
an hour.
inconvenience.
Yeah, it's an
that's a
hour.
loss. But they were so far from paying us what was promised and what was required.
Yeah.
And after giving them, I think, about 8 years, there wasn't much progress.
Sure. Let's talk about the upcoming 2020 census. The county and the city, the state, everyone benefits when people participate in the census. How does the county specifically benefit?
Well, a lot of federal monies are allocated based on populations. And so if you're getting a less thorough census in your area than another area, there'll be a shift of federal support, based on the undercount in your area. So it really is important to your community that you complete the forms, you give the correct information, and that you don't get missed in the census.
Right. And, because if people are missed or people just say, I'm not going to do that, Big Brother knows enough to use Big Brother, and they just don't bother with it, that may eventually hurt people to the point where we're going to have to cough up more money in taxes to cover things that otherwise might be covered by federal funds that are given to us as a state and a county and a city.
That's right. You don't want your community to miss out on their share of the money and have it go somewhere else that gets a more thorough count.
Sure. So please, please, please complete the census. It may be just a form that comes in the mail. If you don't respond to that, someone may be coming to your home by, in person to do it. But however it gets done, please make sure that you do it. It's far too important to neglect.
And those also have a political effect. It's the population count determines, how many House of Representative seats you have.
Oh, yep, okay, that's right.
And then...
And how the districts are drawn
also.
Well,
that's right. When there's changes in populations, all the districts get redrawn from the county board seat level on up. And so an accurate count means that you'll have your share of the vote within your district.
Sure, yeah.
And so usually the year after the census is taken, then all the district boundaries are redrawn to keep them roughly equal in population.
Okay. All right. Let's talk briefly about Veterans Affairs and veteran benefits. I know when you were on last year, there was something that you guys were doing that was going to try to connect vets with something like $60 million or $65 million in benefits. How are things in that effort? Are they moving along?
We have one of the largest veteran service offices of any county. I think we're tied with Milwaukee County in size.
Wow.
And the reason we're willing to invest in that is it makes a huge difference in how much money flows back to the veterans community. My philosophy is that they've earned these benefits, and if we can help connect them with those benefits, it's good for them, and it's actually good for the economy of the community as well. I mean, $65 million coming in benefits to veterans is money they have to spend in their community.
Absolutely.
So I'm very pleased that we are one of the more successful communities at connecting veterans to their benefits.
Okay.
But I did have a concern with the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs. At one point, and I'll make it short, they shut down the mortgage loan program. The interest income on the mortgage loan program was what was funding the Veterans Trust Fund, and that's where the state veterans benefits were coming from. So that, of course, ran out of money, and then they started funding it with the reserves from the veterans' nursing homes, which I didn't approve of at all, because that was then putting the nursing homes at risk.
Sure.
And over that time period, because there was less and less money in the Veterans Trust Fund, the state benefits were really drying up. And much of that trust fund was being used in a way I didn't think was appropriate. It was being consumed by administrative costs of the Department of Veterans Affairs, and those should have been paid by the state from general purpose revenue, in my opinion.
Right.
So we had a situation where the veterans benefits at a state level were disappearing, and the nursing homes were being undermined because we knew that the demographics in those nursing homes was going to change.
Yeah.
The federal benefits for having a veteran in the state nursing home, those are good benefits, pretty strong. They had surpluses, but a time was coming when there was going to be less veterans in there, and then without the reserves, would the nursing homes be able to continue? And the truth is, the WDVA has announced they're going to close one of the 4 buildings out at King. So they are under financial pressure, and in fact, they exhausted their reserves to a large extent, funding that trust fund. So it was one of these things of moving money from one pocket to another.
Yeah.
And they really were putting those veteran nursing homes at risk, and they were really providing less and less benefits to the veterans.
Yeah.
And I like the new director, and I'm going to be at a loss for her name, but the new director of the State Department of Veterans Affairs.
Okay.
I think she'll fix these problems if she's given enough time.
All right, excellent. Let's see here. You had something that you wanted to mention, and this is kudos for our nursing home here in Winnebago County. Take it away, Mark. Tell us what it is.
Newsweek does a survey of all the nursing homes in the country, and they pick what they believe to be the best nursing homes in each state that they cover. And The top nursing home in Wisconsin is Parkview Health Center, Winnebago County's nursing home. I'm not sure what the criteria is. I think you have to accept patients that are medical assistance, patients that get Medicaid. But we were ranked number 1. And coincidentally, Brewster Village in Outagamie County was ranked number 2. And actually, the current director of Brewster Village was a prior director of Parkview.
Oh.
So I hired both of them.
All right.
And,
well, congrats to you, and congratulations to Parkview. That is a wonderful accolade for us.
Very proud of that facility, and we take good care of our community members that either have become sicker or have lived longer than they expected and have exhausted their savings. They still can live with dignity when they have to go to a nursing home because Parkview is a good institution.
Well, and I will say this, just recently, in the last week or two, I drove some folks back there by the new Parkview, and it was remarked upon that it's a beautiful building and just very, very nicely done, nicely laid out. So kudos for that as well. So
very proud of it.
Yeah, our time's almost up here, but I have one question, and I don't know if this is for you or because I-41 is an interstate now, if it needs to be handled federally or what. But there's a stretch of Highway 41, and I'm sure you know where it is. It's kind of just before you get to Neenah as you're heading north. It's sort of, well, and on the southbound side, I think it's around where you get to GG, I'm not sure. But it's just this huge patch of an area on both sides of the highway, and it looks terrible. It's just, I don't understand when they spend the kind of money that they do to fix all the rest of 41 and the I-10 area and everything, why leave this looking like crap?
Well, and you know, the state hires the county to do the maintenance on the highways, so I can inquire.
I would
what's
appreciate
happened.
that because it looks terrible. And I mean, all you have to do is drive from here to Neenah or from Neenah back to Oshkosh, and you can see the stretch that I'm talking about. And it's just, it looks terrible. And it just, I don't know, it gives us kind of it's sort of a wart on our face.
Well, and that's such a new stretch, too.
Well, yeah, they left it like this.
Okay.
And so, yeah, see what you can find out. So, anyway, anything else real quickly? Because we're just about out of time here.
Well, I enjoy being the county executive, and I hope to continue.
All right. That said, though, your term is not up for a while. So
quite a while.
That's right. So we've got you for quite a while. And I'm glad that you're in the role and you're doing a good job. And, you've run for other offices in the past, and I think you would have been good in those positions, too. But we're happy to have you here.
I think I'm going to finish out my career with one more term as county executive.
There you go. All right. Okay, very good. Well, we'll try and get you on before another whole year passes. This year has just been crazy. Good for us, but crazy. So, anyway, thanks for coming, Mark.
Thanks for having me on, Cheryl.
That's going to do it for us for this time. Thank you to Mark again, and to those of you watching at home or listening to us on the radio. And as always, thanks to my crew. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh. All right, we're clear. Good.